Something horrifying has been captured on camera deep within the notorious Mel's Hole, sending shockwaves worldwide. In a quiet part of eastern Washington, this intriguing pit, rumored to be bottomless, has uncovered frightening and incomprehensible footage. Even the most experienced scientists are astonished by the bizarre pictures in its depths. Could horrible things be lurking in Mel's Hole? Stay tuned as we reveal its terrible secrets. Mel's Hole is deep in eastern Washington, and many who have attempted to explore its depths claim that it is bottomless. It was discovered by the landowner, Mel Waters, who was intrigued by its infinite depth. No matter how much garbage was dumped into it, it never seemed to fill. Cameras sent down to observe what was at the bottom only returned fuzzy photos, perplexing everyone who saw them. The hole, located on Manic Ridge near Ellensburg, resembles a conventional well, but it is not used to retrieve water. It eventually became a community dump, where everything from common waste to broken-down cars and worn tires were discarded. Despite this, the hole's ability to absorb never seemed to lessen, which piqued Mel's interest and made him wonder about the exact depth and contents of the hole. The hole caused a noticeable disturbance in the area's dogs, who refused to approach it and showed signs of dread whenever they came close. Mel also detected peculiar disturbances in radio transmissions when he was near the hole, adding to the bizarre events surrounding it. The depth of the pit fascinated not only Mel but also many others who heard about it. In 2017, researchers lowered a camera down the hole to learn more. The footage was blurry but unnerving enough to have them flee swiftly, perpetuating the hole's sinister reputation. Mel connected a weight to a line with his fishing gear and began lowering it into the pit. He let out 4,500 feet of fishing line, but it never reached the bottom. Not giving up, he exchanged the weight for a pack of Lifesavers candies, believing that if there was water at the bottom, they would dissolve. However, they came up dry, leading him to add more line. He eventually let down over 2 miles of line but had yet to strike bottom. Mel continued his experiment with 880,000 feet of fishing line, more than 166 miles, and the bottom remained out of sight. This phenomenon was not simply unique because of its depth. The surrounding environment was extremely calm, devoid of birds and insects, though birds appeared to fly over it without incident. Neighbors reported that their dogs behaved similarly near the hole, expressing nervousness and refusing to approach it. One neighbor even described a strange episode in which his deceased dog, which he had tossed down the hole, reappeared days later, appearing unrecognizable and distant. Despite several attempts to discover what Mel's Hole was about, its true nature remained a mystery. Frustrated and perplexed by the magnitude of his discovery and the burgeoning legend surrounding it, Mel resorted to the popular evening radio show Coast to Coast AM hosted by Art Bell. The show concentrated on discussing paranormal and inexplicable phenomena, and Mel hoped that the various curious listeners would provide some insights or thoughts on the bizarre happenings around the hole. As word spread about Mel's Hole, it inspired both skepticism and excitement, demonstrating our inherent affinity for unresolved, strange stories. This tale about an unending pit continues to pique people's interest and spark debate, highlighting our persistent fascination with the unexplained parts of our surroundings. Mel found himself in the spotlight in late February 1997 when he called into the prominent radio show hosted by Art Bell, who was well known for his interest in bizarre and unusual issues. Mel disclosed information regarding a very deep hole on his property. This call not only announced his findings to the globe but also drew unexpected attention. As news of the hole spread, listeners from all across the world called in, offering recommendations on how to measure its depth with lasers or delve beneath its surface with radar equipment. However, as the tale became more widely reported, it attracted unwanted attention. Mel was horrified to discover the next morning, following his broadcast, that he was no longer permitted to enter his property. The military had taken over, stating they needed to investigate a reported jet crash even though there was no wreckage or evidence of a collision. Mel's life became like a movie scene, with military helicopters overhead and armed soldiers on the ground. The hole itself appeared to have unusual effects. Animals avoided it, yet flora thrived. Radio equipment malfunctioned, picking up broadcasts from many years earlier. Mel's relations with military personnel were tense. They made vague threats about his land ownership and hinted at finding unlawful activity in an attempt to scare him. As the narrative progressed on the radio, Mel mentioned neighbors noticing unusual occurrences, such as a black beam of light shooting up from the hole. Mel never confirmed the stories directly, but the listeners of his radio show, who were already aware of other strange occurrences in the area, such as UFO sightings and disappearances, believed them avidly. The crowd enjoyed speculating about the true nature of the hole. Some believed it was a portal on a magical line of energy known as a ley line, while others saw it as an entry to another world within the earth. This wild guessing continued as more people joined in with their thoughts, incorporating historical details like ancient stone pillars that once surrounded the entire area. What comes next would astonish everyone, a forgotten mystery tied to a sacred site. Despite the growing public interest, Mel's situation became increasingly difficult. His outspoken radio talks might have attracted too much attention from the administration. He continued to provide updates and fresh details on the air, which seemed to serve two purposes: keeping listeners engaged and possibly, though unknowingly, revealing information about his activities to the government. When Mel abruptly stopped appearing on the radio just before he was scheduled to give an update, everyone was filled with curiosity. Eventually, he returned with a story about being offered a large sum of money to give up his farm and relocate to Australia, with strict conditions that he cease discussing the hole and leave the United States. He accepted the offer and left, but his love for home led him back quietly to visit his family, showing that he could not completely let go of his past. This long and strange story, full of bizarre events and dramatic twists, seemed to spiral out of control, benefiting those who enjoy creating conspiracy theories and cover-up stories. Whether Mel's hole was a significant discovery or just an ordinary hole made famous by popular excitement and excessive military involvement is still up for debate. What is certain, however, is that the truth behind Mel's tale remains as ambiguous as the supposed depths of the hole he found. Mel had planned to appear on Art Bell's radio show to discuss his recent experiences, but his day took an unexpected turn. He was on his way to visit his nephew by bus when a heated argument broke out among the passengers. The situation escalated to the point where the police had to intervene. After questioning everyone, they were all transferred to a different bus. Just as things seemed to settle down, Mel passed out. When he awoke, he found himself hopelessly lost in a San Francisco alley, with no memory of the last 12 days. His wallet was gone, and there were multiple needle marks on his arm, suggesting he had undergone some kind of medical procedure. He also noticed that part of his back teeth were missing, and he could taste blood in his mouth. As he tried to piece together what had happened, Mel became involved in legal issues. He was accused of illegally constructing structures like houses and roads, but he was confused, as the government had occupied his land for the previous 2 years. Despite his protests, he eventually lost his property. Mel claimed to have found a mysterious bottomless pit on his rural property in Washington. The hole was strange not only for its depth but also for the bizarre effects it seemed to have on everything that came into contact with it. Mel said that he and his neighbors had used the hole to dispose of garbage for years, yet they had never heard anything hit the bottom. Curious, Mel decided to investigate further. After lowering a fishing line hundreds of feet into the hole and failing to reach the bottom, he realized that this was no ordinary pit. The hole seemed to defy the laws of physics. His excitement grew as he explored the possibilities, but it soon turned into something far more frightening. As word of his discovery spread, Mel began to experience strange events in his life, starting with his finances. To his surprise, all of his money had vanished from his bank account, as if someone were trying to erase or silence him. People began accusing him of fabricating the entire story, calling him a fraud and questioning his motives. However, Art Bell, always captivated by the unique and mysterious, welcomed Mel back to the show for a second appearance. During this visit, Mel shared even more disturbing revelations. A television crew had attempted to locate and document the hole but was unsuccessful. Mel revealed that the airspace above his property had been restricted, which was unusual for such a rural and isolated area. Furthermore, an internet satellite image showed a dark square where his land should have been, as though it had been deliberately erased from view. This black square, which appeared barely 6 months after his first radio broadcast, made it seem unlikely that Mel had fabricated such a detail. The timing of the image added a new layer of mystery to the situation, suggesting that there was more at stake than just a bottomless hole. Then the situation took another unexpected turn following Mel's account. A Native American tribe in Nevada contacted him, hoping he could assist them with a similar mystery they were facing. The tribe had discovered another hole, this time in a public space where the Basque people had resided in the 1800s. The Basques had moved to Nevada from the border region of France and Spain to herd sheep and had a strong spiritual connection to the land. The tribe revered this pit much like the one on Mel's farm. It was similarly about 9 feet in diameter, but with one noteworthy difference: it was surrounded by a metal ring rather than stone. Mel observed that the metal was warm to the touch and seemed to absorb sound. After accidentally dropping a tool on it, Mel was intrigued by the odd qualities of this second hole, so he began collaborating with the Basque people on research. The trials began small, but the outcomes were perplexing. One of the initial experiments entailed lowering a bucket of ice down the hole. The team placed some ice above ground for comparison, curious about what would happen when the ice was dropped into the mystery pit. When they retrieved the bucket from 1,000 feet down, the ice had not melted at all, despite the fact that the ice on the surface had melted long before. Even stranger, the ice was no longer frigid. It was warm to the touch and had developed a dry, salty appearance. When they tried to melt this unusual substance, it caught fire and burned for an extremely long time. This flaming ice defied logic, behaving differently each time they tried the experiment. Sometimes it melted like regular ice, but other times it changed into this strange, combustible substance. Each new test generated more questions than answers. As the mystery developed, someone from the Basque group had a brave and dangerous idea: why not examine the hole themselves? The concept of diving into the unknown depths of the hole was swiftly abandoned due to obvious safety concerns. Instead, they devised another approach, which, while less hazardous, was nevertheless unsettling. They would lower a sheep down the hole. The sheep, apparently knowing that something was amiss, struggled furiously as they attempted to secure it in a box for lowering. It was almost as if the animal could detect the weird energy coming from the hole. They eventually got the sheep into the crate and lowered it 1,000 feet. At that moment, an unsettling buzzing noise filled the air, adding to the already tense atmosphere. The group left the sheep in the hole for around 30 minutes before hauling it back out. What they discovered shocked them to the core. The sheep was dead, but it wasn't its death that frightened them, it was the state of its body. The insides of the sheep had been severely altered. The animal appeared to have been cooked from the inside out, and there was a large tumor engulfing much of its abdomen. The tumor began to move, which made things even stranger. Uncertain of what they were dealing with, the group opted to cut it open, and inside, they discovered a creature that resembled a baby seal, but with one frightening difference: its eyes were clearly human. This unusual creature was covered in a slimy substance and emitted an unpleasant odor resembling the fresh scent in the air after a rain. It appeared to be alive and aware of its surroundings. The group gasped in surprise as the creature slowly moved to the edge of the table. The group and the beast shared an unspoken relationship, as if it recognized them. Without warning, the creature walked to the pit's edge and plunged back into it in one seamless motion. The gathering was dumbfounded, recognizing that they had just experienced something beyond all logical explanation. The hole was no longer merely a mystery, an emptiness in the earth; it appeared to be a portal to another realm, a gateway to things that humans could not understand. Mel was left to deal with the repercussions of what he had witnessed. To make matters even stranger, Mel's own health took a sharp turn around this time. Prior to his participation with the Basque tribe and the weird hole, he was dealing with a serious illness, throat cancer. Doctors had given him a poor prognosis, but something changed after he encountered the creature from the hole. Mel started feeling better than he had in years, and physicians confirmed that his cancer had mysteriously vanished. He believed the monster had healed him in some way, and the encounter left him feeling as if he had crossed into another universe and returned as a completely transformed person. As these unusual occurrences transpired, the story continued to intrigue and alarm listeners of Coast to Coast AM. Art Bell, the always curious host, invited Mel back for more interviews, each of which revealed more weird and unexplained details. One especially alarming episode featured Mel and the Basque group's experiments with unusual burning ice. A Basque man decided to take some of the blazing ice back to his cabin to stay warm. However, what transpired next was beyond anyone's expectations. Mel's chats inspired both curiosity and uncertainty, underscoring how unexplained experiences may profoundly influence our thinking. People are naturally intrigued by strange happenings, especially those that contradict our understanding of the natural world. In Mel's case, the key component of the story was the burning ice, a unique event that lasted several months. This ice did not melt; instead, it appeared to absorb all the moisture from the surrounding air, drying up everything in the cabin where it was being used. It caused anxiety, particularly for the man who lived nearby, as he was affected by its repercussions. His skin grew exceedingly dry, and no amount of water he drank could quench his thirst. Even heating water proved challenging. When he attempted to use his stove, the steam from the boiling pot did not evaporate regularly. It seemed as if the flames from the burning ice had a magnetic attraction to the moisture in the air, drawing it out. What started as an uncomfortable situation quickly became bizarre, with the man left to deal with the growing oddity. The strong heat generated by the mysterious ice undermined the wood stove and the floor beneath it. As time passed, one would expect anyone in their right mind to stop using such a risky and unreliable heat source. However, the occupants, strangely unconcerned about the mounting danger, simply patched over the hole in the floor and continued to rely on the flaming ice for warmth. From a logical standpoint, this conclusion seemed virtually ludicrous, yet there was something about the ice that drew them back, as if it had a hold on them. The cabin's structure deteriorated more rapidly as they continued to use the ice, and the extraordinary heat continued to degrade the timber, weakening the home's foundation. Eventually, the cabin literally fell to dust. It seemed as if the entire structure had failed under the strain of the unusual, unnatural conditions caused by the burning ice. When the cabin's owner arrived a month later with his brother, they saw an unsettling scene. The wood stove, which had previously been resting on the floor, was now 5 feet below ground level, as if it had sunk into the earth. The pit around the stove was smooth and oddly spherical, as if it had been cut with precision. The brothers stood there, perplexed, trying to comprehend what had occurred. The new hole around the stove seemed like something for geological research, but there was no apparent scientific explanation. It wasn't your typical sinkhole, as there was no evidence of erosion or falling dirt surrounding it. The two brothers attempted to fetch the stove, but it was too heavy to lift on their own. Only with the help of a giant crane were they able to remove the stove from its strange resting position. Yet, the intrigue did not stop there. After the stove was retrieved, the pit remained, appearing even more strange and unexplained. The narrative of the flaming ice, the sinking stove, and the weird pit left everyone with more questions than answers. The episode served as a reminder of how unexpected and uncontrollable nature can be when it deviates from our expectations. This ice didn't just burn, it seemed to defy logic, leaving behind a chain of events that no one could have predicted. It became a cautionary tale about the dangers of interacting with unique and unknown natural phenomena. As time passed, the flaming ice became a source of wonder and speculation. Those who had witnessed or been part of the events began to debate the larger significance of what had occurred. They wondered if the ice was not merely a curious natural phenomenon, but rather the embodiment of something more fundamental and unfathomable, possibly even otherworldly. The concept that there might be forces at work that we don't fully comprehend, or that defy scientific explanation, piqued the interest of those who had witnessed the occurrence. Ongoing discussions also uncovered another component of the mystery, reports of a seal-like creature that emerged from the now infamous hole. Those who claimed to have seen this creature described it as having a deep spiritual link to the forces of the pit. Witnesses spoke of feeling calm and peaceful in the creature's presence, as if it came from a higher realm rather than from this world. People began to believe that the creature was a spirit, possibly connected to the unusual ice and the hole. It was seen as a protector or a messenger sent to warn people of the dangers that lay ahead. This myth took on a life of its own, especially among the local Basque people, who interpreted the creature and the hole as part of a broader spiritual story unfolding in Nevada. For them, the flaming ice and the inexplicable happenings surrounding it were not just coincidences, but indications of a deeper connection to the earth and its hidden powers. They also felt that the bright, fearless birds that appeared to circle the hole were part of the spiritual drama, sent as messages or favors by the creature. The Basque people claimed that the seal-like creature had discovered a way to communicate with them, adding to the mystery of the story. The messages were not in words, but rather in the form of a series of beeps and clicks over the radio. They understood these sounds as warnings about the ice and the risks it posed, further deepening the intrigue surrounding the entire event. They were persuaded that these were not random sounds, but rather intense, warning signals from the monster, cautioning them about the catastrophic potential of the ice if it were used incorrectly or fell into the wrong hands. Art Bell, the ever-curious skeptic, probed the Basque community for proof. He wanted to see evidence, recordings of these strange beeps and clicks, images or films of the creature, or anything that could back up their claims. The Basque people boldly asserted that they had recordings of the sounds and offered to bring them to Art for analysis. They hoped that using ART's platform would allow them to reach a larger audience and educate people about the dangers of the ice. The broadcast concluded with promises of more research, with Mel vowing to return to ART's show with all the information he could find. But just as the tale seemed to be taking a dramatic turn with proof on the horizon, something unexpected happened. Mel disappeared. He stopped replying to ART's messages, and his phone line was disconnected. Nobody heard from him after that. His sudden disappearance, just as he was about to present the proof, cast doubt on the entire story. Critics may argue that such developments are typical in fiction, based more on imagination than reality. It's a recurrent cliché in paranormal stories: just as the proof is about to emerge, something happens to stop it. For those already doubtful, Mel's disappearance only added to their concerns. However, for serious believers, Mel's disappearance was further indication that there were forces at work in this story that went beyond the natural world. Mel's Hole's fame endured even after his disappearance. On the contrary, it grew much more intriguing. People continued to speculate about Mel's absence and whether it was related to the unusual events surrounding the hole in the burning ice. Some suspected that he had been silenced by unknown forces, either the government or another organization that didn't want the truth to get out. Others speculated that Mel had gone into hiding, fearful of the consequences if he revealed too much. The narrative lingered in the imaginations of those who had followed it from the start, a tantalizing, what-if, dangling on the verge of plausibility. Despite the lack of clear evidence, people continue to wonder if the strange story had some basis in reality. The exact location of Mel's hole has been the subject of much discussion and speculation since the story first emerged. Mel had given imprecise details about the hole's location, somewhere in Nevada's backcountry. Some have attempted to pinpoint its position using satellite imagery. At one point, TerraServer photos appeared to show a blacked-out area where the hole was said to be. This discovery sparked suspicions that the military had taken over the area and was actively concealing the hole's existence. Later, when Google Earth provided clearer photographs of the region, no decisive evidence was uncovered, adding to the confusion. Mel's Hole has become one of the best-known modern tales, a story that straddles the line between fact and fantasy. It was first reported on the late-night radio show, Coast to Coast AM, with Art Bell, which is known for discussing paranormal and unusual topics, in 1997. A man named Mel Waters phoned the show to share a story that has fascinated and puzzled listeners for decades. According to Mel, his property near Ellensburg, Washington, contained a hole unlike any other, a bottomless pit that appeared to defy the natural laws of physics. Mel described the hole as being around 9 feet in diameter, with flawlessly smooth sides that seemed man-made. He claimed to have dropped various objects into the pit, including domestic waste and refrigerators, but none of them ever made it to the bottom. The oddest part of Mel's account was when he described a neighbor lowering a dead dog into the pit, only for the dog to reappear alive and well days later. Mel described the hole as having otherworldly qualities, almost like a portal to another universe. Despite these outrageous claims, Mel never provided any images or tangible evidence of the hole's existence, even after Art Bell repeatedly urged him to do so. As time passed, Mel's story evolved. He claimed that the government had expressed interest in the hole and even attempted to purchase his land. Mel reported that black vans and helicopters began appearing around his property, and he was eventually forced to lease his land to the government in exchange for a substantial sum of money. He later relocated to Australia, continuing to call Coast to Coast AM for updates on the hole. However, he never provided substantial evidence, which only fueled further suspicion. Many people dismissed Mel's claim as a hoax due to the lack of genuine proof, yet the legend continued to spread. Mel's hole captivates people due to its ability to tap into the universal desire to believe in the unknown. People enjoy a good mystery, particularly one involving extraterrestrial phenomena. The concept of a bottomless pit, a place where the usual laws of physics no longer apply, sparks endless debate. Mel's hole, a mythological hole in the sky, has long fascinated humanity. Over time, the story has developed as listeners craft their own hypotheses and interpretations. Some believe it is a portal to another realm, while others think it could be a wormhole or a government experiment. The pursuit of the truth keeps people engaged, and the more people search, the deeper the story becomes, transforming Mel's hole into a modern urban legend. In 2017, a group of curious people decided to investigate for themselves whether Mel's hole really existed. They set out to identify the hole using online coordinates and found a pit that resembled Mel's description. They attempted to determine its depth by throwing rocks into it, but the subsequent silence was eerie, reinforcing the belief that the hole might be bottomless. As they explored, they felt as though they were being watched, adding to the mystique surrounding the site. They documented their journey in the hopes of obtaining proof of the hole's existence, but before they could review their tape, a sense of urgency overcame them, and they were forced to flee the scene. On their way out, they witnessed a small insect fall into the hole, which had an unexpected significance for them. Mel's story has become a collective one, shared and adapted by those eager to uncover its secrets. The hole has evolved over time, symbolizing our collective fascination with the unknown. The lack of actual evidence has only increased its allure, and people continue to debate and investigate the mythology, whether for entertainment or serious purposes. So, what are your thoughts? Is Mel's hole an actual phenomenon, or is it just a compelling legend?